Morning, everybody. Check on the stove here. It's zero here today with a pretty fierce wind, so you really can't do a whole lot other than stay by the stove. And I thought I'd make a little video. A lot of people asked about some of the little bits that make, I think, make my tractor not necessarily special in any way, but I just kind of think it's strange how it was optioned out. It may be pretty common for an industrial tractor, but you can drop me a comment and let me know what you guys think. We'll start by, here's my dog Petey. He's staying warm. Pretty much a bunch of them here and there. There's Murphy and Oreo. They're camped out. So the first thing that I noticed when I started tearing this thing all apart, that the radiator, it didn't have any rivets right here that would say D2 on it. They're blank, you notice. But later on, when I started to get a little more knowledgeable about these little guys, notice the Caterpillar logo on the side. It's newer. It's not it's a more modern font on the tank. Well, I started asking some questions, and a couple of guys that are a lot smarter on these than I am said that they didn't put that on but just the very, very last of the D2s, like the 57 model year. So that got me wondering. So when I tore this apart, I had to do some extensive work on this tank. When I tore it all apart, it was just full of rust, just absolutely full. And it had corroded so bad at this, where the tank meets the radiator core, there was no way it could have sealed. It was just, it flaked and everything else. If I could find a picture of when I had to put it on my milling machine, and I machined that joint flat again. So far, so good. It had like a few little weeps when I first started it, but once it got a good heat in it, it sealed right up. So very happy about that. But so also the radiator core inside of it, they had a little tag in there. And the tag basically said 1960 on it. So this radiator had been replaced. Well, if it had something go through the radiator, they probably would only put the core on, not everything. So I would think that this thing had a disaster at some point, pushing something around. It got away from them. Because if you look here, you can see the water neck. This has all been brazed back on here. This neck here has been brazed. And then this cap, this is the one I got off of John Bronson. He scrounged around and found me one. But this here was all mashed in. It just had this part of the cap. They didn't have the cover on it. And it wouldn't fit. So so it like basically whatever went over the top and just hit this. But that must have happened since they put this radiator tank on there, because a new radiator tank would have had a new one of these on there. So it may have been something that happened. It wasn't exactly a one-time occurrence. Also, I'm going to try to get the compression release here. I don't know if I'll be able to turn this over enough to see it or not. Oh. Yep, you can't, but anyway. This pulley right here where you adjust, basically it had been broke all the way down like this, a big chunk out of it. And somebody had welded it, and they didn't quite have it matched up properly. So I had to basically go in there and cut that out, re-weld it and remachine it so the belt would stay on there properly. There was no way to keep the belt adjusted right the way it was. And also, kind of neat item I thought, was it has a pusher fan on it. You know, that's why it has this guard on here, so, you know, your, important, papers for your wristwatch, your fingers don't go into this pusher fan. So, when it's running, because it does have quite a vacuum on it when it's running at rated speed. Also, this, so my thoughts are that they really did some damage to this front end of this tractor at one time. Just trashed this radiator. They got new parts from Caterpillar, put a new radiator, new tanks, new side panels. I don't know about the bottom piece. Maybe, maybe not. Of course, pretty common item, the oil cooler. I did notice it when I took it apart. I cleaned it up real good and kind of pressure checked it with air. I didn't think it had a hole in it, and it didn't at first, but as I started running the motor, it's turned into a geyser and oil started going everywhere. So everybody says that these things aren't necessarily need to have an oil cooler on them. So what I did is I come in here with these lines and I machined a little cylinder like a blank and pressed that into the end of that line so it looks like it has all there, but it actually doesn't work anymore. And I took the bypass filter at the bottom there. There's a bypass valve here, little guy here, and well, the springs decided to take leave of the place. But anyway, there's a spring. Did you take that and this valve out, and it basically just bypasses that. I guess when that filter gets stopped up, it's made to bypass it, and it will keep you going, even though the cooler's stopped up. So anyway, I just did that. I can't see anything detrimental so far when running it. The thing has wet stacking issues. As you can see, it's all slobbery, but I've had it told to me by several Caterpillar guys that once you get these things overhauled, you need to run them, put a good load on them and get them hot. Well, this thing's done nothing but idle and drive around the yard. So if I could get some of these other jobs I need to do to make it to where I could get my gauges on there properly and everything to where I could really get a good heat in it, we'll see what happens. It runs awfully good to be something wrong in there. It doesn't mix any fuel and oil or anything, so I think I put new injectors in it. The little capsules, put those in there, but my injector plungers, they're I took them apart and cleaned them and retimed everything. And if anybody had been following me on the Acme Facebook page back when I had a Facebook account, you would have seen the process that I went through to accomplish that, and everybody thought I did a pretty good job for the most part. So I don't think I had a problem there. And yeah, in theory, what I could have done on the injection pumps really wouldn't change this, because this would probably be like, say, like a spray pattern going into the pre-combustion chamber. If you had one that slobbered or something, drooled or whatever. We don't have any of that. I've checked them you know, turn it over there and run. They just have really fine mist, really nice looking spray pattern. And, you know, I've worked on diesels for, you know, that's what I do to make, you know, for a living for several years. So it looked good to me. And the only thing that could happen to the pump, it would be a delivery issue, which could be timing. Don't think so, because I timed it really well. It's double and triple checked before I put it back together. So I think it just needs to be broke in properly by running her, get her good and hot. And I can't put with my pusher fan, I can't put a big blanket over the front of the radiator. So I'm just going to use the PTO. A friend of mine has a grain grinding mill. Usually it takes about a 50-horse tractor to run it, and it's a pretty good size one. And he says, you think you can keep this thing running, because he don't want me to have to, he's going to make me go up there and shovel the grain out of it if it stalls or something. Because I guess whenever they get a load on them and it, you know, whatever's running it quits running, it's quite the mess to get it unstopped up so you can get going again. So I assured him I do my best to make it to where the thing's going to run good before I bring it over there. So I appreciate him letting me basically grind his feed to use it for a dyno on this thing, because there is quite a bit of risk for him and me. I don't like getting up in that tub and shoveling grain out of it, so it stinks. Okay, so I want to talk more about the front end here. Well, it's got this, it's got the type of front end where it's got a bar that goes around here and connects down there on this pad right here that goes underneath the engine. Has a bar, and then from there, it has this. I believe this is the setup the tractor had originally. And I have a picture of the original guard for the tractor. It had so much stuff welded onto it. It had pieces of railroad rail welded on the front of it. It had big old bars of the type. It had more reinforcement that went across here and come down. It was a real big mess, is what I would say. But I could tell that it was like this. See how it had this cutout at the bottom of it, not like this one where it's solid, which that means that it was made, this is right here, for use with front bumper. I seen what Squatch had to go through to make a front bumper for this thing. Not looking for that. I mean, it's bad enough I have to I imagine trying to find one of these grill guards like this one even in good shape, that's not just beat to thunder, is going to be hard enough. So I'm basically, I would assume that a person would find somebody that has a water jet table, make it with all the holes in it, and then have it bent in a radius, then have to do the bumper too. I don't know. Looks like a lot of work. But here, this shows the group with the pusher type fan instead of the pull fan. And over here, it has, this is the font that most of the Caterpillars have on the side of the radiator tanks. I don't know if there's a picture of the top tank in here or not. No. So that's, I want to try to cut it off about right here anyway. I'm rambling on, but I thought that was some of the neat things that was on this tractor, and kind of have to be part of a, you know, it almost like a autopsy or whatever, exploratory, you know, to, you know, put all these together. What happened to this thing, you know, when it, you know, all this stuff got broken, things got changed, and it's just, looking back, it's pretty cool. When it happens, you're like, why can't it be like everybody else's and just go together? So, no, oh well. I'm sure everybody has their, when you do something like this, tear these things completely down, put them together, there's so much stuff that can go wrong. You know, it's like this one here, I had to get a cylinder head for it because the original cylinder head, you can hardly tell now, it's kind of rusty, but see how pitted it is? It had a big old crack in that one cylinder, and it top of the piston looked just like the bottom of that head. The valves are all trashed, so it was just basically just drinking water, and that's what, you know. So was the crack because the radiator got damaged? They continued to run it, got it hot, cracked the head, then I had to replace the head and pistons and all kinds of stuff. Or what? Who knows? Which come first? Don't know for sure. I basically got a theory on it that, you know, maybe there was some damage here. They didn't, that, you know, it was cracked or whatever. It leaked down. The guy hopped on this thing, took off, didn't check the water level on it, got hot, never knew it, cracked the head. It could be a common thing. I don't know. But alrighty, well, I think my next thing I want to do, I have a lot of work in this area of the tractor. I want to try to, hopefully I'll have time next week to edit a good video with this, because I've got to work on this piece here, this transmission of a thing. I don't know what you'd call it for the starter. Starter goes in and it has a pulley with a belt, has a bearing inside there. Well, that's like one of the very few things that I went and turned that bearing and went, oh, it's good enough. Big mistake. Because once I got this thing going, that bearing is squalling like a smashed cat. It is making some awful noise right now. I don't even want to start the thing because it is bad. So to get that off, you have to take this off, which takes this off, which takes all this off. Then my starter, I got this solenoid on here. Well, it's supposed to mount here and here, and this is supposed to be on the other side of the, when you do that, that's above the hood line. So this starter, I've had it off, tried to, I don't know what it's for. It's, I think I was told that this pony motor come off of a grater, and I seem to believe it, because once I got it on here, the exhaust pipe was different. It's like for a D4 tractor. This starter is different because it's made for this solenoid to be on top of the starter. The ones that are for, they make several different designs over the years. So I'm thinking that I could get this starter apart and re-clock where these bolts go through to clock the starter back over there where it should be for me. Get this stud back around the corner there so it don't ever get in contact with any kind of hood damage or whatever. That way I can put it on the milling machine. I can put it on my rotary table and clock it, or however I want to set it up. I haven't really thought too hard about it, but that's a job that needs to be done. This is not correct, but it works good. other than this valve leaks a little. I don't know if I can get it out there and maybe get some grinding compound and try to kind of work that valve back and forth and try to make the it seat better with a little bit of grinding compound or what. I want to try something because it just weeps just a little bit. I got to put my electrical system here on once I get this fixed, fix that. Also, I got my fuel line here. I can't find steel tube. So I just fabricated one out of a soft copper. Just basically, it was the best thing I could come up with to make a pattern. It's the best pattern I could do. So I got a pattern, and I've got some hard copper over here that I think would, not ideal, but I want to try it. I think I can do that because I can bend it with, I got a bender for that. So I'm gonna have to do this. My tank, you can see here where the valve is, it's hitting the fender. Well, the bushing that comes out of the tank is not long enough to let the tank go over the fender to make the valve, basically, it hits the fender before I can see. This tank's not mounted, but this in the front. So once I got all this together, I found out that that needs to be longer to give it enough clearance for the fender. So that's a job that needs to be done. And to do that, you have to take the, you know, the foot plates have got to come out of it. Foot plates will have to come out for this. Also, we're going to put the gauges in there, put some proper battery cables in it so I don't have to start with a pair of jumper cables, you know. Here's another unique thing for this machine. Look where the battery's at, that battery box. Well, you can't put it on the other side because there's a fuel tank there. So I looked at a lot of pictures of these. I assumed it went here because that's where a lot of them put it. They're right here on the fender. Well, I think this is the place, is because the original cable was still on this, that for the alternator, and it even had some, you know, it had been there for so long that it had bends in it that wouldn't come out, and it was bent just, I mean, it just fit in there perfect to put it right here. And well, you know, it's not exactly the funnest thing to get the dipstick out for the pony, but you know, I guess but there was bolt holes in the fender for it, so I'm not 100% sure if this is correct. Feel free to comment if you ever seen one out there like that, but the bolt holes fit up well. And I guess if you could ever get I got a big toolbox that comes to here, but I'd like to get a shorter one that would fit this, maybe cover up this big hole for at least a little while, and try to cover, you know, that would leave me a, you know, what, a foot to get in and out of this thing. It's I'm not a little guy. I'm 275 pounds and 6'1", so it's kind of a mouthful, you know. When I get in there, it eats up a lot of space. So, and then here's the PTO. You know, it's just got a sprocket on there. That's what ran a truck type Tulsa winch that come across the back of this thing. I don't think it had this on it at all, but it was it looked very homemade. To get it all to work, the fuel tank was mounted differently. It had these big pieces welded on it that stuck it out. That's probably why it's all beat up. I wouldn't think anything like that would have come out of the factory. So, I don't know. We'll try to get started on that, and I'll let you know how everything's going. Thank you.